Glenn, Carle, what can this attack potentially do to the psyche of the Israeli nation? Never imagined that an attack of this nature on Jewish people, on Jewish land would be possible. And the fact that now people are probably overreacting in panic, pressing off buttons, sending off emergency messages which aren't true, which again is a consequence or a side effect of the attack last weekend.
So again,
well, I think any people is I might not be the ideal person or the single best person to assess the Israeli psyche, but reasonably so. But if any nation is aware of the existential threats and hatreds directed towards it from time to time, and in Israel's case, without stop by Hamas, I mean, it's the Israelis. The charter of Hamas is quite clear, and we should take people at their words. They act upon their words, they believe them, which is that they want to kill every Jew and destroy Israel. That's not hyperbole for them. And the Israelis are not unaware of this. I worked closely with colleagues and friends in Mossad and the IDF, and that is their life mission to stop this kind of hatred from actually taking effect or being carried out. So on the psyche, I don't think there's a change in awareness of some of the threats. There might now be, unfortunately, the human inclination to respond excessively to a hideous series of acts, as the United States did after 9/11. The United States needed to respond, but our response created its problems themselves. Our response did. Similarly, Israel has a terrible dilemma now. As our colleague just said, they need to address the threat from Hamas. But how do you do that without actually exacerbating the problem and creating terrible strife for Israelis and for Palestinians? No one has come up with a solution to this in decades.
General Hasnain, you've got the challenge of the Hamas, and the Israelis have launched an all-out assault against the Hamas, and the idea is to finish the Hamas off forever in every form and shape. There's also the Hezbollah in the West Bank, and the concern that if the Hezbollah were to get involved, given the fact that they're a more formidable military force than the Hamas, how could that potentially impact the nature of this conflict? If you were a military man in charge in Israel, how would you be looking at the threat posed by the Hezbollah and the fact that there's been some firing between Israel and Syria? There's been some firing between the Hezbollah, firing mortars, the Israelis responding with artillery fire. How do you see that play out?
Thank you. Very good question indeed. I have visited the northern front of Israel, the Israel-Lebanese border, and I do consider that particular border to be of even greater importance than the southern border in Gaza. Gaza is a small border comparatively, and whatever Israel has to do in terms of response and reaction doesn't require a very large force. I only hope that Israel is not overreacting, bringing in too many forces down south, because actually a balanced disposition is very, very important at this particular time. If you denude your north, if you lessen your forces in the north, the temptation of Hezbollah will be very much there. And we know that there is a common sponsor for all these organizations. So there's always believe, continue to believe, I would advise Israel, that something from the Hezbollah, something from the northern borders can very well accrue in the manner it happened in 2006. And in 2006, there were many, many lessons to learn from that. In addition, I would also say one more thing as to your earlier question which you asked. The response in the psyche of the Israeli forces and the Israeli people. I think if you go back to 1973, the response by General Sharon and going between the two armies and getting to the highway to Cairo was something which was so innovative, which has never been tried out perhaps by anyone ever in the history of warfare. Now, that's the kind of thing which the Israeli armed forces are known for. And you can expect that something very innovative, which we haven't thought about, will probably emerge in the near future, even as this war pans out.
What could that be? Frederick Landau, what would you be most concerned about at this moment? Do you think there's a bright chance that the Hezbollah could get involved? How is Israel likely to deal with having to deal with the Hamas in Gaza, having to deal with the Hezbollah, and potentially even Syria?
So just to come upon the General's comments, we have, of course, fortified our southern borders, but our northern border is extremely fortified now, especially that we are not interested in a second surprise attack. Back in 2006, we had our second Lebanon war. We know, sadly, Lebanon very well. We know Hezbollah very well. But I think that a more worrying scenario would see a more active role taken by Iran. I don't think at this point Hezbollah are going to be active, but they are going to allow the Hamas Lebanese faction continue to shoot from the Lebanese border. But this is, I am sure, something that we can handle. But Israel, it is absolutely right, is trying at all costs to stop the option of a two-front war. And we, of course, want to focus on the current problem, which is the southern border and the dismantling of Hamas.
Mr. Sood, we've seen over the last several months several enemies of the Indian state being assassinated in mysterious circumstances. We had, one killing just yesterday, a Lashkar terrorist in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. We've had some of the masterminds of the hijacking of IC-814 being taken down. Pakistan and the ISI calling that a terrorist attack. Is that something that you think India should be wary of, the fact that there have now been multiple such instances of terrorists who are on India's most wanted list being killed in POK, and the potential of the ISI or some of these terror outfits wanting to strike back?
You see, the ISI had been disturbing India, Pakistan has been disturbing India for the past 40 years. And I think now our friends sitting in Pakistan are neutralizing our enemies. This is the kind of situation that we have to follow. This is the kind of the operations that we should be more aggressively following. And this is the kind of actions that we should take. We should not wait, like Israel, that when they come, we will see. We should go out, like, when they did Pulwama, we did Balakot, and we neutralized 300 militants. Similarly, we will have to do something big, without caring about that Pakistan is a nuclear-powered country. And in this now, whatever has happened in Israel is a eye-opener for all the world, including the USA. They should not be waiting for 9/11 like incident to happen. When 9/11 happened, thereafter US started supporting India in Kashmir. Otherwise, US was a spectator, they were enjoying. Now, after this Israel-Hamas war, I think this will be an eye-opener for the world that Pakistan is a terrorist country. Pakistan should be neutralized. Pakistan should be finished. Their weapons should be controlled by the US or other countries.